Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. From Philippians, what does that even mean? How does it apply to your life, if it even does? That is what we will explore today. Welcome to the Sunday service. Do you find that your brain is always on? Is it always running? Are you always thinking? Are there thoughts running around like crazy? Is it noisy in between your ears? Or do you need to turn it on? Is your brain very quiet and very still and less activated? Do you know where the switch is to turn it on? Or do you know where the switch is to turn it off? Do you have to plug it in? Do you have to unplug it? Does it require a restart every so often? How often are you generating new ideas? Do you find that ideas are constantly popping into your head, or do you have to force them? Do you get your ideas from quiet contemplation, from listening to podcasts, watching videos, being on walks? Where does it happen? Where do you ideate? How do you do that best? Do you think that that's a good thing? How often do you think about that? Do you think about new ideas? Do you think about what you're thinking about? Have you ever thought about what you're thinking about? Do you think that there's value? Do you think that it's good to be thinking about what it is that you are thinking about? I don't know. I think that it is. I think that that's nothing but a good thing. All that being said, I don't know that I was creating a lot of original ideas for a good chunk of my adult life. I think that all of us are artists and all of us are creatives, and we're constantly coming up with new ideas and using our imaginations when we're kids, when we're little. The universe is open to us. The world is our oyster. It's if you can dream it or you can achieve it and whatever, you kind of get the idea. And then work, bills, obligations, schedules, busy, 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 that has a tendency to dull or even deactivate or turn off the part of our brain that is that idea creating machine, is that creative artist kind of a person. And I think that that's not a good thing. I think that that is a bad thing. And then you mix in the world that we're living in today, where we're just constantly inundated by information. We're constantly inundated by other people's thoughts. Think about just wasn't that long ago when there were, four channels on my TV. I had ABC, NBC, CBS, and PBS. We didn't have cable when I was growing up. Eventually we did, I think, but didn't have it. And I wasn't reading the newspaper. So new information, it was coming from Tom Brokaw, Peter Jennings. Those are the two that kind of come to mind. I forget who was on one of the other. There was just a handful of people who were the arbiters of truth who read the news. And if you were somebody who listened to AM radio, which I was not and am not still, you were getting some other ideas. Scheduled if you subscribe to magazines, you were getting ideas. But it was just way less, obviously. I know I'm not breaking any new ground here, but I just submit that today more than ever, we have this constant influx of other people's thoughts and other people's ideas. And they might be pure and honest, or they might be trying to influence us. They might be trying to influence you to come around to their way of thinking, or to get you to buy something or not buy something, or protest this or protest that, or click here and subscribe there. And you kind of get it. So I don't think there's ever been a time where it's more important to be activating our brains, to be turning on our thinking, to be using our brains for what they're really designed to do, just to think, to process. Do you train? Do you work out? Do you exercise? Why? Why do you do that? Maybe you want to feel good. Maybe you want to look good. Maybe you want more energy. These are all really compelling reasons. And the primary reasons, you want health span, you want lifespan. Me, I do it because for all those reasons. I want to look good. I want to feel good. I want to be able to chase my kids around for as long as they're interested in having me chase them around. I want to be able to play pickleball for as long as I want to. And everything else, I want to be able to get up and sit down without immense pain. I want to be able to do all these things. So therefore, I train my body. I do cardiovascular exercise. I weight train. I lift heavy things. I stretch. And I try and put good food into my body. So you do those things, which you ought to. I think that those are a requirement. Why wouldn't we also be training our brains? Why wouldn't be thinking about how can I do a better job supporting my brain? Because without that, then I guess the rest of it doesn't necessarily matter. But if you're not using it right now, then it might not matter at all. So I think that there's a lot out there. I know that there's a lot out there. I know that it is wise, prudent to put to work the gifts that we have been given and to not be tapping into our greatest source of power as human beings, aside from our opposable thumbs. It's our ability to reason. It's our ability to plan and to think through things and make good decisions. So with that being said, have you ever tried meditation? Have you ever thought about meditation? The idea is, how do I get better at controlling the direction of my mind? Because our brains are all the same. We're always getting new ideas and they're bouncing around and there's shiny new things popping up. The idea behind meditation is simply that we quiet the mind and we control where it goes. Doesn't mean that I stop it or I can totally stop it from moving around to new things that I'm not focused on. But what it does do is it trains you to recognize when that happens. Let's say I'm focusing on writing focusing on a new chapter for a book. And I'm sitting there, my favorite coffee shop, I'm writing. But then I catch myself wondering about the baseball game from last night and thinking about the amazing plays that I saw, or thinking about just what I need to do this afternoon, or what my wife asked me to do, or how I need to do a better job with some of my, whatever it might be. You catch yourself doing that and you bring yourself back to the task that you were focused on. That's really the value there. So quiet the mind to control the direction of your mind. And I know that every time that I encourage somebody to meditate, it's probably super obnoxious. It need not be. Meditation is not a woo-woo thing. It's simply, again, it's training your brain to be more effective at that important thing, which is thinking. So anyway, so anybody who says, which is all the time, my brain's just too busy for that, I'd say, well, that's the biggest reason that you ought to consider meditating is to slow it down, to grab control of it. Otherwise, it's the tail wagging the dog versus the dog wagging the tail. And I want to be the dog that wags the tail. In this example, I want to be the human being that controls the direction of my thinking. You certainly get it. And if you're a person who says, well, how in the world am I ever going to make time or find time to do that? There's this great quote from Russell Simmons that I'm not going to be able to actually quote him, but the whole idea was that if you can't find 20 minutes to meditate, then you need it more than anybody else. So that's just evidence that you're not necessarily in control of your mind. You're not able to organize and prioritize things in a way that's going to get you what it is that you want. So it's the ability to think. What if you could get better at thinking? What if you could increase the quality of your thinking by 10%? Would that translate into an improvement in the quality of your life by 10%? I think that it would. What about 20%? Could your life be 20% better? Would you like that? I can't imagine anybody would say that I do not want my life to be 20% better. Yet, here we are. Just because I intellectually know that something is good for me certainly does not mean that I do it. But remember that movie, Limitless, with Bradley Cooper? Anybody call him Brad Cooper? That's a cool name too. Bradley Cooper, Brad Cooper. Anyway, he took this drug that helped him to really focus and to increase his cognitive ability exponentially. I mean, that's what we're talking about really, is how can I improve my cognitive ability? How do I improve my thinking? So I think that there's a lot of wisdom on this topic that shows up in pretty much every major world religion, certainly in the Bible. Just um, read the verse, and I think that that is number one, a beautiful verse, but just giving evidence. Let's focus on the things that matter. If we can do that, the better off that we're going to be. In terms of philosophy, Nietzsche, his philosophy's got, he's obviously an absolutely brilliant thinker, brilliant human being, brilliant philosopher. He has a concept called will to power, and he considers that to be the driving force behind life and human existence. And it's not a desire for dominance over others. What it's it is the impulse, and he considers it to be a profound impulse to create, to transform, and to assert oneself in the world. So he considers that to be rule number one, or thing number one. Again, it's impulse to create, transform, and assert oneself in the world. I like to think and talk a lot about locus of control, and I want to have as much internal control, internal locus of control as I possibly can. The opposite is external, obviously, and that just means that you don't feel like you have a lot of control over your life when you think that you are constantly being acted upon by outside forces that are beyond your control. Internal locus of control says that I have control over many things in my life, or at least I have perceived control over many things in my life. And I certainly understand and appreciate that I have very little control over many of the circumstances of my life, but I have absolute and total control over how I think, feel, and respond to those circumstances. And what Nietzsche's talking about is, again, not trying to dominate or get over on anybody or manipulate or harm anyone. It is my desire to use my abilities, my brain, my thinking to create, transform, and again, assert myself in the world. And I definitely have that. I definitely want that. I'm not here just to go through the motions. Steve Jobs talked about how we're here to put a dent in the universe. If not that, then what else are we here to do? So I'm trying to advance humanity. I'm trying to move the conversation forward in the way that I know how. And I believe, I know that the better I can do with thinking and the more pure my thoughts, the more thoughtful I am about my thinking and thoughts, the better that I'm going to be at that. So I think that there's a lot of ways to do it. Um, I think that thinking is probably the most reasonable and practical way to do that. And in order to do that, we've got to turn our brains on to engage in independent thinking. I talked about how I think that it's like everything in life, whenever there's new things, it's a double-edged sword. There's going to be a lot of noise and garbage out there when everybody has the ability to essentially be their own news channel or their own distributor or publicist, because now we've got, I guess, probably an unlimited number of platforms to do it on, either through blogs or podcasts or Instagram or TikTok or YouTube or whatever. There's you pick you take your choice, make a choice, take your pick. So I think it's healthy, but it's healthy to be paying attention to be people that you believe to be clear thinkers, to people that you believe are accurate, honest actors out in the marketplace. So I think that it's great to take in any other ideas. There's a lot of brilliant people out there prognosticating on nearly every topic. But I also want you to be making up your own mind. I want you to be thinking your own thoughts about that. We're all standing on the shoulders of giants. So just generations of people that have come before us. We're talking about the Bible today. And so that is an ancient text. And it's an ancient text that literally countless people have benefited from and have taken the ideas and built on them. So nothing new under the sun, but of course there are. You can put your own spin and your own take on ideas that other people for millennia have been doing. So I think that it's nothing but a really, really, really positive thing. In the spirit of that, from Romans 12, verse 2, Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is. So don't just go with the flow. Don't just do what everybody else is doing. Transformed by the renewing of your mind. From Thessalonians, test everything. Hold fast what is good. Test everything. Hold fast what is good. Try it all. Take it for a spin. Discard the things that don't serve you. Hold on to the things that are serving you. From Buddhism, the Kalama Sutta, do not go upon what has been acquired by repeated hearing or upon another's seeming ability. When you yourselves know these things are good, these things are blameless, then accept them and live accordingly. So very, very, very similar. Just because you hear the same thing over and over again doesn't mean it's true. Just like doing the same thing over and over again is the definition of insanity. Just because you hear something over and over again repeated by the same kind of people doesn't make it true. Figure out what is true. Figure out what is true. Hinduism teaches from the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna advises Arjuna to seek wisdom and make his own decisions based on inner conviction, saying, deliberate on this fully and then do as you wish. So think deeply on whatever topic that you are interested in thinking deeply on, or if you're trying to make a decision about something and you're not sure the way forward, think about it and then make up your mind. Make a decision. Do as you wish. Judaism encourages questioning and debate through the study of Torah and the Talmud, where different interpretations are explored. Rabbi Hillel famously said, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? And when I am only for myself, what am I? So this is telling us to pursue a balance of self-reliance and ethical consideration, thinking about responsibility and self-determination. If I am not for myself, who will be for me? And when I am only for myself, what am I? So find that middle ground. Powerful. So, across most major religions, ancient philosophies, all of these, there's a recurring theme valuing inner reflection, personal responsibility, and making informed decisions. Some traditions emphasize learning from scripture, teachers, divine wisdom, but they all encourage followers to think critically, to pursue knowledge, to make choices then that reflect the understanding of that and what your values are. Take in a bunch of information, think about it, make up your own mind, and then act accordingly. So, getting back to the idea or the question of, is your brain always on? Is it constantly running, or is it just quiet? How do you turn it on? When it is time to activate the brain, when you've allocated time for thinking, which I think is a really important thing. But there's not a right or wrong time to do it. Maybe you have a commute every day, and instead of just zoning out and listening to the radio, think, okay, this is when I'm going to do some introspection. This is a topic that I've been thinking a lot about, and I need to do more thinking on it and come to a conclusion to think about it. Maybe it's first thing in the morning. Maybe it's at the end of the day. Maybe it's over a cup of coffee. Maybe it's after exercise. Maybe it's during exercise. Maybe you get wonderful thoughts when you're on the treadmill or out for a walk or lifting, whatever it might be. We need to figure out how to turn our brains on. We need to be better stewards of our attention and our thinking. We need to be super mindful of what we're letting into our heads and considering the source, and then applying our values to it and making informed and correct decisions based on what it is that we believe to be correct and true. And then to take a page out of Nietzsche's book, start creating, put your ideas out there, start having an impact. We're all capable of doing it. We all need to make up our own minds, now more than ever. We have this God-given ability to create in ways that no other living creatures on Earth, maybe anywhere, have the ability to do. And that's a super profound and powerful thing. But it's also a shame when we don't put it to work and we waste it. So that's the last thing that I want. Don't waste your brains. Put on your thinking cap, turn the brain on, get started thinking, making up your own mind, thinking critically. As always, do your part by doing your best.